So I would really love to welcome Johannes Reindl. And Johannes is coming to us from Lintz in Austria today. And many of you know Johannes because in Reiki Australia, we talk about you fairly often. We have little comments about you from time to time. And I've been doing this interviews with the masters for the last month or so, and we had someone from Kamiya Aikido in Melbourne, Sally Wayne, who's our Australian connection. We've had Frank Ajava Peta. We have had Franz Steiner, and we've had Patrick Ziegler, who is the Seishem Sakhum as well. And we're looking at, or we're waiting to hear back from Hayakaten Inamoto as well, who said he'd be happy to do it, but he's been away. So thank you so much, Johannes. So for those who don't know Johannes, he's humble, and he doesn't necessarily want to be introduced as the Grandmaster, but this is the title he now holds, and that is the Grandmaster and Lineage bearer for Usui Shiki Ryoho in the world. And this is such an honor that we have this opportunity to speak with you, because for those of you that don't know all the lineage, Johannes was trained by Phyllis Furumoto. And of course, she was the granddaughter of Hawaii Takata, who trained under Shiojiro Hayashi, who trained under Sensei Mikawa Sui. So welcome. And we're so thankful that you're here. And we want to learn a little bit more about you, not just the title. And because I'm a hypnotherapist, believe it or not. And so I'm always trying to get to the bottom of what motivates people. And that is their life story as a general rule, that the early years set the stage for who they're going to become in the rest of their life. So would you like to talk to us a little bit about yourself?
About myself?
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to hear? What is your interest? Where shall I start?
Start at the beginning. Do you know where you were born, whether you've got siblings, how you grew up, and the things that laid the foundation for you to go on a search for the healing routes that took you on that Reiki journey?
Okay. So I was born here in Austria, 1997. Oh, no, 1977. Sorry, not that young.
I was going to say, you're young.
77. No. And grew up here in Austria in a tiny little town close to Lintz. I have a younger brother who is 5 years younger than me. And I would say I was introduced to Reiki at a very young age, when a very close friend of my mother, she learned Reiki in the mid-1980s, I think, which was at that time in Austria something quite unique, quite special. And she was always very interested in massage and in Tai Chi and in meditation. And at some point she learned Reiki. And very often when I went for a visit, she would work on me or try out what new she had just learned, what I always loved because it always was beautiful, right? So at some point I felt when she's touching me, there's something different. There's an extra connection or an extra quality. At that time I thought, wow, that's her, right? Because I always felt very, very close to her. And well, to say a little bit more about her, she's that very close friend of my parents and of mine when I was little, and I was playing outside, and at some point I felt, well, I just go for a visit, right? So very often when my parents could not find me, they just rang her, called her, said, is he there? Oh yeah, okay, send him home. So that close of a friend, right? And that was in the 80s, so that was possible to be out there as a child in the village, and you never get lost, right? Yeah. So at some point I felt, well, when I grow up, I do what she's doing, whatever that is, right? So I had no idea what that is, but I think it was for my 16th birthday, I think, Another very close friend of my mother, she was a Reiki master at that time, and she still is. She gave me a book for my birthday as a present, a book about Reiki.
Right.
Did not read the full book, but I immediately remembered, oh, that's that cool thing that other friend of my mother is doing. And then actually I signed up for a Reiki class, for a first degree class. That was then 95. Yes, 95. And I think I experienced what many of us experience when we first connect with Reiki or consciously decide that we want to learn Reiki. This experience of homecoming, this experience of deep connection, of maybe deep peace, or whatever our words are. And I would say it was also some kind of love at first sight, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
And and from then on, I continued to practice. And another year later, I studied second degree with my master here in Lintz. And then from then on, I quite early was connected to the more international Reiki community because I started to travel to Germany, to close to Hamburg, where Reiki master from my Reiki master, Michael Hartley, was running quite a big Reiki center at that time, where people from all over the world would come to participate in Reiki workshops or in other workshops. And that's when actually my Reiki life, so to speak, in the Reiki community started.
Yes, so
What
we're such a long way away in Australia. And when you're in Europe, you kind of find everything is just a hop, step, and a jump across the road. So you're
more
more
or less,
connected to the center of it. Mm.
more or less, because it's quite easy in Europe to travel by train.
Yep.
As you say, literally often things are just around the corner or just a few hours by train. Um, but just one jump back first. One reason why, looking back now, I did not see that or I did not know that at that time. But one reason when I look back now, I see what connected me to Reiki, why I was looking for Reiki, I think was I was a very insecure, shy man, young man at that time.
Mm.
And what I was looking for unconsciously or not really knowing, excuse me, I was looking for some inner support, for some inner strength, for my self-esteem, for my, well, feeling safer in my body, feeling safer in myself, feeling some
That
kind of
sense of
support.
connection, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And that's definitely what I immediately found. It put me into some deep processes, I would say. That's what Reiki can do, or Reiki does every now and then. But it really gave me a deeper connection and a deeper sense of belonging and a deeper sense of inner peace in a
Yes.
way. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so can you tell us how that then led you to connect with Phyllis?
Wow. Connecting with Phyllis, that took, well, not so long actually. Well, first I heard many stories about her, right? I heard about her life. I heard about the Reiki story and about her place and her role as Grandmaster and lineage bearer. So I always was very curious about her work and what she's doing. And then I think in fall, maybe September 97, there was a Reiki students gathering in Germany at the border to Austria, somewhere in the south, I think. So I signed up and went there. And it was a very interesting connection because I remember that while she spoke and gave her talk, um, very often I felt that in my mind, in my brain, even though my English was quite okay, I felt I did not understand what she was saying.
Okay.
But at the same time, in my body, I felt each word of hers is deeply landing. And then I thought, oh, that's interesting. I need to follow. I need to learn more about her. I want to know more about what she's doing or what her work is. Because I felt there is a connection, and I felt in this, I think now, what I what I realized or what I recognized was that she was coming from a deep place of authority.
Yes.
About the practice. And that interested me. And I wanted to know more. And then a few years later, I think it was 2001, I was working in this Reiki center in northern Germany from Michael Hartley. And because I had no idea what to do with my life, I had no idea what to study, had no idea what to do at university. And I was a bit upset because most of my friends were already almost graduating and I hadn't found anything, and it was really a disaster. So at some point I called Michael and said, well, do you have some work for me? Because I have no idea what to do. And he said, well, sure, just come here. Just let me know when you arrive by train and I'll pick you up. So I was working in this Reiki center for a couple of months and working in the garden and kitchen and picking people up from the airport and everything. And then for the summer, there was planned a Reiki summer camp with many artists coming, with singers and songwriters, with painters and sculpturists and
Wow.
people doing artwork, and at the same time practicing Reiki in community and living in community. And for this event, it was planned that Phyllis would come for a couple of weeks and we would live together, everybody. So during this summer camp, it was my really real connection with Phyllis on a more personal level. And I think it was also that summer that I recognized and realized first that I wanted to become a Reiki master myself and that Phyllis should be my initiating master. But that was more in a very personal, almost intimate moment for myself of realization. And I kept it for quite a while for myself. But I started to work for Phyllis because at some point she needed an interpreter. I was just sitting in the kitchen and chopping vegetables. And she came in and said, you speak French, right? I said, yes. Come with me. I said, okay, what are we doing? And she said, well, I have this little group here and we have a French participant. She's not speaking English. Nobody of us is speaking French. So you just sit there and translate everything for us. And I said, well, I never done this before. I said, oh, no, don't worry. You will be fine. So it was a very interesting experience, a very fun experience. And there were some points I was not fine at all. I was very stressed. But also it was this this moment I thought, oh, maybe this is something I could study at the university. Maybe I should become an interpreter. So I think it was also one of these moments where Phyllis, she had this gift to see potential in people, often way before people saw that potential themselves. And she often encouraged people or maybe sometimes gently pushed people in a certain direction when she saw this is something for you. So at the end of this summer and this summer camp, Phyllis invited me to work for her in the United States the following year and to work for her as an interpreter again, because she had a master class coming up and she had two Reiki masters from Germany and she wanted to have someone to interpret the whole master class. So I said, well, I've never done this before. I've never interpreted a masterclass. I'm a second degree student. I don't know. Are you sure? Said, oh, sure. You will be fine. And okay, before I trusted her. So the following year, I traveled to Idaho first, and then there was this masterclass in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And from that time on, I actually every now and then I worked for her as an organizer, as an interpreter, or just somebody in the background doing things, working in the community, what I always enjoyed, because working in the kitchen or as an interpreter, organizer, you get to know the best people, right? In the background.
I'm sure you do. Yes, yeah.
So it was really very, very beautiful time. And then meanwhile, I had this thought, well, maybe really learning to be a professional interpreter would be something for me. So when traveling back to Austria, I then did a little research. What is the offering at the universities here? And then I found out there was Sign Language Interpreters College coming to be. Was there in this, they were in this phase of planning it and not yet being sure if it will be, they can open or not. But I signed up and registered, and then there was a little entrance examination, and I was accepted. And then I studied for 3 years full time to become a sign language interpreter.
Wow,
yeah.
That's interesting. Yes.
Which was more or less the only time where I had no time to be in the Reiki community much, because as a student, no time, no money.
Definitely, yes.
But then at the same time knowing, well, 3 years, that's doable. And after 3 years and after graduating, I would work as a freelancer and give me a lot of freedom to travel again and go back to the Reiki community and work there. What I then did. And doing all that time and all that working close with Phyllis and being present, I had this wish in my heart to become a Reiki myself. But it was never really the time, or it was not the right moment, or there was always something why I wasn't ready, or I was not, I don't know if was not ready is the right word. I think I felt so busy with all that work, internal work I wanted to do,
Yes.
I did in Reiki, and there were always these wonderful, great workshops and these big offerings, right? I always felt like, well, I received so much, I don't need that. I can do that later. I can become a Reiki master later. So then finally in 2013, I think in October or so, I finally then stepped forward.
Awesome.
And asked Phyllis if she would accept me as her student and if she would train me and initiate me. And when I asked her, she laughed and smiled and said, well, this took us quite a while, huh? To come to this. I was waiting for you.
I knew that's what you would have been thinking, yes. When the time was right.
And I started to be part of her group. I became part of her group. She had a little group of Reiki master candidates with whom she prepared, and we went on master candidate retreats with her for a couple of years. And we traveled to Japan together with Phyllis, which was a very beautiful gift to have that opportunity to be in Japan and to learn about the cultural and spiritual roots of our practice and have your master present. That was really very unique and very beautiful. And then in 2017, in October, Phyllis initiated us in Japan, in Kyoto. And then I thought, well, after my final training and becoming a Reiki master, I thought, well, now it's time to travel a little bit less, to be more at home and teach Reiki here in Austria. And then things became a little different. And
yes, the path is already laid out before us. We've just got to look for the signs and realize that what we thought was meant for us is something different.
Yeah. So that's how I actually connected with Phyllis, and yeah, it was really, she is a very, very important person, a very important part of my life. And I often miss her dearly and miss her a lot. And her presence and her way of living her life in Reiki and her life in the Reiki community and her deep embodiment of the practice, I often found very challenging to be around with her.
I've heard that she could be very direct. Is that the word?
Oh, yeah. Direct. But her deep embodiment always was also a deep inspiration. There were moments I felt like just sitting next to her. There was no need to talk, but just sitting next to her felt to me like I receive a Reiki treatment, right? There was so much energy coming through her and her questions and her way to how to hold questions from students, how to find an answer, how to go way beyond the question and then something emerging that would be much more than an answer, right? that I always found so inspiring and so beautiful and so, I mean, she was just throwing out all these gifts all the time to everybody. And yeah, she is a great inspiration and a very important person in my life.
Do
Yeah.
you still feel her presence now, or is it simply that you've now, what's the word? You've just soaked in her essence, and that's influenced the way that you are on this planet these days and how you do your work?
Well, maybe it is both, but I
Yeah.
feel her presence. I feel her presence very much. Every now and then I feel like, oh, here she is again. You know, never in a way of being too much or of overwhelming.
Yeah.
More like a gentle presence, a gentle, and it can happen every now and then. It's not, I often think of her, of course, but I have this experience also with my grandparents, for instance, or with very important and close friends who had died and passed away, where I feel this gentle presence and gentle connection, where I feel it's more than just my memory. It's more
Yes.
than just me thinking of them. It's really a presence. It's hard to explain.
Oh, I do understand completely. Yeah.
Very soft, very
Just
comforting, and
and a
very hard.
reassurance that they're there with you. They're still part of your journey. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Wonderful.
Maybe sometimes I feel her also a little gentle pushing, as she always did, in a direction where I feel like a little resistance to go. I feel like, oh no, there's a little pushing here, but always, yeah, very
And it's
supporting.
interesting because when we feel that push sometimes, even though we don't necessarily think we want to go in that direction, once we take those steps, we go, aha, this was where I was
Yes,
meant to be. It just unfolds, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly.
Excellent. And so
Mm.
can you talk a little bit about your position now? And I know I saw that the post come up when Phyllis announced that you were going to be the next lineage bearer and Grandmaster. And I believe you were a little bit surprised because you were in a committee, weren't you? That was sort of trying to work out what to do once she had her cancer journey.
Well, a little bit surprised. Very, I mean, it was like, what going on here? Because, I mean, there was, when Phyllis was diagnosed with breast cancer, I think that was 2012,
Yeah.
10-ish. I don't know exactly the year. There were students and Reiki masters Phyllis had trained and initiated who connected with her and said, well, Phyllis, do you have a plan for this process of succession? Do you have an idea how this should unfold or how this should look like? And Phyllis said, no. And her students then said, well, then make one because you have to have one, right?
That's right.
So,
Yes. Not something
so
you could just leave up in the air.
but that also would be an option. But
Mm.
what Phyllis then did was what she often did when there was an important question coming from the community, or not only important, but a potent, a deep question coming, that she always then invited the community to become part of the process, to be part of a development of exploring that question. So first, she and Paul together, they created what they called succession weekends. So
Yes.
over a week, people would come together and explore questions around the process of succession. I think there was one, the first one in the UK, and then United States, Mexico, Germany. I'm not sure. I think one was in Kazakhstan, and then the last one was in Austria. Um, and after the series of succession weekends, Phyllis then thought, well, there's more work that needs to be done. Let's meet on Zoom.
Yeah. Easy.
So this group who had at these weekends then formed what we call 4 years almost every Tuesday of the month for a couple of hours. Meetings during these times together, we really went into all possible directions, right? From not having a successor to a little group would take on that responsibility, to Phyllis would recognize someone, all different scenarios. And we did this with the support from a close friend of Phyllis, Ben Haggard, who is a facilitator and teacher in regenerative thinking,
Okay.
and who supported us in looking in a different way or learning to think differently and to step out of our ordinarily way of thinking and maybe sometimes very linear, and to explore different potential and much more learn about shared responsibility and shared leadership. That was a very important topic for Phyllis. But also her thinking was, or her wish was, that there was not only a process, an event of succession, but there would be preparation for the process, and there would be a group who would hold that process when it come to the moment of recognition and the moment of her naming her successor. And nobody knew in what direction this would go. It was also deep exploration of what we call the unknown.
Yes.
And our relationship in Reiki in this unknown, and trusting that unknown and not going to the place of fixing a problem or fixing an issue or a theme, but really trusting and go way deeper. I think we learned a lot during that time.
Yes.
And looking back, for me, it was often quite a stretch to be part of this succession core team, because at this succession core team where we prepared for when my master, I'm at the same time parallel preparing for my mastery, but at the same time being in this group preparing for that time my master would no longer be there.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was quite a challenge, sometimes very painful and very sad.
Yeah.
Because simultaneously we also prepared in a way for Phyllis's passing, right? And that was maybe sometimes very unconscious. At other moments it was maybe more conscious. It was just this.
It's on your shoulder and it never
Right.
goes away. Yeah.
Right. And this topic of death and dying was traveling with us all the time, as it always is, but they are maybe more conscious. So it was then in October 2018 at a retreat in Spain, where Phyllis announced that when she would go home, she would have examination by her doctors. And if these results would show that the cancer had been growing back, that she would no longer want to have a chemotherapy again, because she didn't feel having the energy for that. So then everybody was very shocked or kind of stressed, and everybody hoping and praying and doing everything, and that there would be no cancer results anymore. But then in January 2019, Phyllis announced and shared with the community that despite that all hopes, the cancer had been growing back, and that she decided not to have any chemotherapy anymore, that she's pain-free, that she's at home, and she has palliative care coming to support her and be with her and with her wife, Joyce. And at that time, I think it was a shock for the community, but it was also this succession core team who had taken on responsibility.
Yeah.
It was like, again, as Phyllis's quality, push into a certain direction. It was again another step of going deeper and still being able to hold the unknown, to hold that so gently that whatever the next step would be could emerge without
it would be revealed. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So then in February 19, I think, I don't know, mid-February, Phyllis and Paul called me together with Joyce and Ben, if I would be available to serve as an interpreter, because we would have a master intensive workshop in Arizona beginning March, if I could come to interpret there. And I was a little bit doubtful in the beginning, while at the same time, when Phyllis was on the phone and asked me that question, it was, of course, I come. If Phyllis is calling me, then of course I'm coming. I was a bit doubtful about being a French interpreter, because meanwhile I was already a professional interpreter and knew what qualities I need to have, and I knew that my French would be way not good enough. So I said to Phyllis, well, I don't know if my French is good enough. And she said, well, of course, don't worry. And I said, you don't speak French yourself at all, so how could you tell, right? But my number one motivation was to see Phyllis once more. So I accepted the invitation and I traveled to Arizona. I was a little bit challenged where a few days before I traveled, when I saw the list of participants and I saw the name Laurence Fontaine, who is a French native speaker and served as a French interpreter for many years.
Oh dear.
So I called Joyce again and said, why do you want me to come interpret if Laurence is there? That doesn't make much sense. Said, yeah, but Laurence, you know, she would like only to participate and not interpret this time. And could you please come? Said, well, okay, challenge accepted. Traveled to Arizona and worked there for this master intensive. And after that master intensive, Phyllis invited a little group to work together with her and with Paul at her place in Arizona. We met every day in her living room and spent the day there, and working on questions around how this whole work that she and Paul had created over the years could be continued, and what does it need, and many other questions. So we lived in a hotel close by and traveled every morning in a little convoy to Phyllis and Joyce's house and spent the day there. And whenever Phyllis had energy, she joined us and worked with us. And then it was at the end of this time together on March 15, where Phyllis recognized me as her successor. Very much to my surprise, and even more surprising when I soon after heard from many others, and they said, well, that was so obvious, or, oh, I knew it, or whatever their thinking was, wherever they came from. Very much a surprise. As a surprise, a huge gift, a huge challenge, a big honor. That totally changed and transformed my life completely. Sometimes I felt like my life was turned upside down.
We call that in our line of work. Well, my husband and I ran fitness centers for 20 years, and we'd get new instructors come along who just learned how to teach classes, and we'd say, guess who's taking this class today? And it was called Birth by Fire.
Oh yeah, well, that's a good word. Yeah.
Yes.
Birth by fire. And yeah, and so this recognition and this announcement of recognition on March 15th. And then 2 weeks later, 31st of March 2019, Phyllis Furumoto passed away. And ever since, I'm continuing that work of the lineage, of that spiritual lineage, we call it in our practice. I continue the work. Lucky me, I'm very supported by many wonderful people in the community, because that's a work that could not be done by one person.
So true, so true. Do you feel like you found your feet now? Because your energy is completely different to when I first saw you 2020 or 22, it might have been 2022, and your whole energy is different now. It feels like you've grown into that position. Yeah.
Yes and no. I think growing into is never ending. It's an ongoing process, as our lives in Reiki is always a continuous process and not a full I could say, now I know and now I'm finished. That's never the case. What actually, one tiny little, do we have time for a tiny little story?
We've got time for whatever you want.
So when I was traveling home mid-March from Arizona, from the time together with Phyllis, I think I had a layover. I changed flights and did a layover in Atlanta, I think, for a couple of hours. It was one of the weirdest flights home, to be honest, because it was really like, what does that all mean? What now, right? And so I went for breakfast and I went for coffee at the coffee place, and across that place where I came to sit with my breakfast, there was a bookstore. And in this bookstore was the book presented of Michelle Obama with the title Becoming.
Yes.
So I was sitting there and saw that book, Michelle Obama smiling, beautifully smiling, as she is always. I thought, oh, becoming. That's a sign, right? I took that as a sign, or as a sign from the universe, if you.
Yes.
And immediately felt a lot of peace, right? I understood that I don't need to be ready. I don't need to be whatever I thought I should be. It's about becoming. And
we're all that work of art in progress, aren't we?
Exactly. And I take this moment when I was sitting having breakfast with Michelle Obama, so to speak, as a really as a deep understanding, and actually as a teaching that I'm always on the process of becoming. And I, as you said, 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, I was in a very different process and a very different place of time of my life. And in a year or two, this will also be different from now. I think something inside of me has softened or kind of accepted in a deeper level.
You've settled into your
right.
next incarnation of who you're meant to be.
And I think
finding that comfortable place.
Connected on a deeper level with what Phyllis passed on to me.
Yes.
Still, it's hard to articulate in words or to describe what that role, function, and being is. But I accepted that place in a deeper level, in a deeper sense. I had many resistances. And looking back, many of these resistances had to do with my honoring Phyllis and honoring that spiritual lineage. And my feeling was, that's not appropriate for me. That's not my place. I can't be there. So I had to do a lot of work around that to accept that
humility. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. And to embrace it, right? And looking where I am right now, I know I still have plenty of work to do. And I love that work now. And sometimes I have resistance, and sometimes I feel like, oh no, I'm not interested. I don't want. But looking back, I had this in many other places and times of my life, my resistance and my I'm not willing. But I deal with that differently now. And as I said, there are many wonderful people I'm working together with, Paul Mitchell and Joyce Winnow, who are together with me in this office of the Grandmaster. And their experience, their wisdom, and with many, many other people in the Reiki community, we're working together. It's not for me, in my experience, this place of Lineage Bearer and Grandmaster is not like a top-down role.
Yes, I get that. Yeah, it's we're all in it together.
Yes, and we're sitting in a circle, and each person, each individual in this circle holds a responsibility. And we're all coming from different places, from different experiences, from coming with different questions and with different agendas, maybe. And that's wonderful. And we're working together. And that makes me going. That makes me continuing.
Definitely.
And yeah, that's where I am.
Do you find that even with your own personal Reiki practice, You know, lots of people say we've got to have everything straight down the line as was taught by a master, and I believe that too. But I just think everything is a beautiful evolution as well, because each person takes on a little part of themselves and shares what their particular passion is in the way that they teach. So it's all our own personal stuff as well. So we want to always teach as we were taught, the traditional methods, but in our modern world, there's so many different ways people teach these days and so many different things they incorporate. So what's your view on that? And are you still teaching, by the way, or you're mainly just doing the work of holding that position and traveling and giving talks and all the rest of it?
Well, my work with Reiki is that I start every day with self-treatment.
Good. Somebody asked me, ask him what his daily practice is.
So, and this is since many, many, many years the case, right?
Yes.
And I really understand and see that more and more as this is the foundation for everything, for everything else that comes after. For me, self-treatment practice is this wonderful gift that we literally and figuratively have Reiki in our hands, and that we have the relationship with the practice and the energy of Reiki in our hands. And there's much more to say, but this would be then a total different talk, so I don't want to go into that. So, and I have my Reiki studio here, and I give treatments, and I have clients coming regularly to have treatments. I teach Reiki here in Austria or wherever people are inviting me and organizing for me. And I travel to be with the community and continue the work of the spiritual lineage, as I said. And I trust that each individual, each person who wants to learn Reiki connects with their master they need to connect with. Right?
I agree. I totally agree with that.
There's no best way to learn Reiki, or there's no most original, or we are all connected, and there's so many different forms out there. And I mean, if we would Google Reiki, and I don't do that because it's just overwhelming, right? There's so much offer there. So Reiki exploded and went into all these different forms, which is to appreciate, which is to honor, which is to hold. And when a student approaches a Reiki master and learns about Reiki, they start their own journey in Reiki. So, and I totally trust the energy and the process in Reiki, that they will find what they are looking for. And sometimes it happens in a day, and sometimes it needs some years. So maybe some questions needs a lifetime to be answered.
So true.
But I totally trust the process and Reiki energy. And depending of where we are coming from or what our calling is, maybe we hold a different responsibility in this Reiki world, and therefore also holding a different commitment. So I'm committed to this Reiki form of Reiki practice as it had been passed on to me, and holding it together with the community, and see where this practice is guiding us, and where the evolution of the practice is going, and where this development is going, which is something we can plan rationally. This is not something we can organize and think, okay, let's go this way or let's go that other way. I often use the analogy of a language, right? Language is also equally like Reiki as a living entity.
True.
And we are all using this languages every day for communication and much more. So if we could say we could make a time travel 100 years back and could connect with people, we would realize and recognize that people would speak a little different. And I think this is true for all the languages around the world. We would understand, we could maybe communicate with them, but we would recognize every now and then something's a little bit different than we speak now. And this is very natural because language as a living entity
Oh,
is going through a process of evolution every time, every day, actually. New speakers are born, speakers are dying, and it's a constant evolution. We recognize that every now and then when we say, oh, have you heard these young people, how they're talking these days? It's so different. We never use these words. So this is when language is evolving, which does not mean that we rationally, consciously change the language. The language is evolving.
it's a
And I
living
think that
entity. Yes.
exactly. And that's the same with Reiki. If we could travel back in time 100 years and have a talk with Mikao Usui, meet with them and maybe have sake together, and talk
Beautiful.
about the or practice together, which would be even more fun than talking about it. We would maybe notice that there's some things is maybe a tiny little bit different, but still totally the same.
Yes.
So in this evolution and in this stream of energy and of constant process, we are part of, and we are holding that evolution, and evolution is holding us in that practice. And I think that's the journey, that's the calling, responsibility, commitment, all of it. And everybody who's practicing is part of it. And I find that's beautiful.
So,
That's the beauty.
do you focus yourself mainly on the healing side of it, or the spiritual path, or they're part of they're part of the whole thing, the whole package, aren't they? So you use meditation. Have you done other healing training? Have you looked at people with the Japanese style like Jikidan and Kamiya Aikido, those sort of styles as well?
So I grew up here in Austria in a very, I would say, traditional Austrian Roman Catholic community and little village. And my parents, through my parents and the larger family, I was very connected always to the faith in Christianity. At the younger age, I then realized it's not my path, but I still feel very, very connected.
Yep.
It's not my, maybe that's not really true. I'm just realizing while speaking.
Yeah, because religion is a bit political, and
Yeah,
we want to take the politics out and come through what is the main message from every religion about treating others the way
well,
we want to be treated, all of those things.
yeah. For me, it's really through the connection and through the deep practice in my family, in the larger family. I feel it's also part of me because that's what I received, and I honor
Foundation.
that.
Yep.
So I might not go to church every Sunday, but I feel a strong connection, and I feel that when I also feel the challenges and the deep pain that's coming through these traditions too, right? So I think this is part of who I am, part of how I grew up, and this is part of my being in a way. If we would call Christianity a language, I would say I'm fluent in this language.
Yes, yes.
Even though, as I said, I'm not really consciously practicing it anymore. So for me, Reiki had become my practice. And if I say my practice, there are many different parts are part of that practice. It's a spiritual practice, it's a healing practice, it's a practice of self-development, and it's all of that. So it's sometimes of my life, maybe one is more present than the other, but the practice is always hands on my body every day, going to someone who give me a treatment, giving treatments, teaching, that is all part of that practice I hold. And I do not practice a meditation practice. I do not practice any other Reiki practices. I deeply honor them. I'm very, very grateful that there are different ways of practice. Every now and then I connect with someone who is practicing a different Reiki practice. I'm not so, how to say, I'm not so interested,
I knew
actually.
that's what you were going to say. No, what you're really meaning is that doesn't concern you. Each person has their own journey, and you found yours, so you don't need to look anywhere else.
What I want to say is I'm not so interested when, for instance, I'm meeting someone who is practicing and holding a different practice. I'm not so interested in the differences.
Yeah,
I'm
the similarities.
not even that. I'm very much interested in spending time together and practice together.
Yes.
Talk, practice, do the work together. That's much more fun. Then we have an immediate experience and exploration, and that's more heart connecting than the brain and who said this and who said what
So true,
and what
so
happened.
true.
Like, yes, there is a part where it's important, I agree, but the much larger part in time, I think we can spend in practicing together, and that's
I think
what
our
Reiki.
egos get in the way, and the whole religious thing is mine's better than yours. And it really is to let the Reiki be the vehicle to bring us together rather than the talking about it or the judgment of one as being different to the other. It's just letting that energy bring us together.
Right, and I think that's also what many spiritual practices are doing or can do. They don't speak so much about the differences, but spending time together and praying together, meditate together, whatever we can do together. Like, there's, even though we speak different languages, actually, we could sing in a choir. And that's for me the analogy, right?
Beautiful.
We don't need to learn about other people's practice, but we can spend time together to share in the exchange. And that I find beautiful because it's very, very simple. I mean, it doesn't get much simpler than hands-on, I would say.
That's
What
right.
else?
And that's what I was saying. Reiki is very, very simple, isn't it?
And very effective.
And very effective. I've had breast cancer twice myself, and I've had bone cancer, and I cured that bone cancer myself just with Reiki and self-hypnosis and meditation and nutrition and all the rest of it. So yeah, so I mean, I've been doing Reiki since 1998, and I've seen thousands of clients from hypnosis Reiki, and I've got over 1,000 students as well. But it really is all about just have faith, just having faith that the energy will do what it's meant to do, and it just brings us to our own truth of knowing that we are enough, and that there is nothing that is impossible, that we can do anything when we just connect with this universal lifeless energy, and let it work through us, and not be the person that's doing the healing, but let the healing work through us.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's an interesting journey, this life, isn't it?
It's it is, with all what it brings. Yeah.
And so I hear a little birdie tells me you're coming to Australia in March next year.
That's correct. We are planning that a wonderful organizing team who are bringing us to Australia. Paul Mitchell, Joyce Winnow, and we're traveling almost the full month of March.
Wow.
It's now working on the details and where to go and what to do. And this team is very busy and very engaged and doing wonderful and amazing work. So I think by beginning of August this year, we have the details ready and have all the, what do you call it, the invitation and the links and whatnot to where people then connect. I could forward this to you, and maybe you could share it.
That would be fantastic.
News.
Yeah. Look, that'd be great, and I will share that on all our pages as well. Yeah.
Very much looking forward to be together in community in Australia. I have to say I'm very challenged by traveling. Because I said earlier today, in Europe, we can take the train and travel by train, and I love taking trains. I do not like so much sitting at the airport and waiting for my flights and then sitting in this squeezed tiny little bit of space that's given to me.
Oh, I know.
I'm not scared of flying, but it's just energetically a lot of sacrifice, actually. Also holding into consideration that it's a part of climate change is coming from this massive, intense flights and everything. So I'm really looking forward and being in community, because being together in person is for me something very, very important.
Very
Zoom
soon.
calls do a lot of work, but can never ever replace the in-person connection.
So true.
That's why I take these trips and travel far. If I would go on holiday, I think I would not take these long flights.
I have one son in New York and one in Canada. And
Yeah.
we've only been over once, but it's 22 hours in a plane.
Yeah.
And I've been to China once as well, but it's just it's such a long time to be sitting. But you know, every time I go on a trip, I see every opportunity as a time to learn and to grow. And I listen to audio books and I watch movies and all the rest of it. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm very happy and I'm very much looking forward to spend time together, practice together, explore questions, maybe finding answers, who knows? Or maybe finding more questions, which would be much more fun.
I think so. And I think that's really what you get when you think you've got the answer, another question comes up, doesn't it?
And that's planned for March 2025, next year. Yeah.
Excellent. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm just so grateful that we've had this opportunity to get to know you a little bit more, and that you've just been happy to share all this information. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish here? And your website, if you're happy for me to share your website and anything else at all. And when you share that information with me, I'll make sure I advertise it for you as well. And we will just continue to grow this little family we've got worldwide, and share that little part of what you bring to Reiki now with our people in Australia as well.
I don't have a big message, not at all. I just hope that through the work we are all doing, that we encourage people to practice. Practice.
Excellent.
And don't stop.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, oh, well, I've got my master's now and now I don't have to do anything. And I always,
that's the opposite.
You hear so many people say that, oh, it's like a box to tick off. And I always say, you know, now that you're a master, it's like getting your black belt. You're proficient in the basics, and now your journey starts. Now your journey starts to truly find yourself and let the energy teach you. Yeah. Excellent.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
And thank you so much. Excellent.
So we are going to meet in person in Australia next year.
What was that?
So you and I, we are going also to meet in person next year in Australia.
I hope so. I hope we do. Excellent.
Very good.
Because I'm in Dubbo, out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how I got to be the chair for Reiki Australia, but like you, it just happened. But I just trust the process, and it just gives me joy to be able to help as many people as we can on this journey. Excellent.
Wonderful. Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'll press the stop recording button now, and we will see you when you come to Australia. And I just feel very honoured that we've had this opportunity to get to know you.
Very much. Thank you.